Let's get hyped. Welcome into the Husker247 HypeCast. I am Mike Schaefer, joined by Brian Christopherson, Mitch Sherman, and Michael Brunts will be joining us shortly. Mitch Sherman is this week's special guest from The Athletic. Mitch, how we doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Good. We're good. It's the last game before the next bye week. How do you feel about the double bye in the college football slate? I feel like it happens every so often, and I'm always thrown off a little bit when there's two bye weeks in the same season.
I believe that next year is also a double bye. If I
Okay.
if I am not mistaken in having heard the way the schedule looks to lay out in 2025, I'm okay with it. It provides us with another week of college football viewing. I enjoyed myself during the first bye in being able to sit back and watch games around the country. I don't know how the second bye is going to treat me. That's going to be college football playoff jockeying time for various teams, and I might get sent out on an assignment on the road, which I would prefer if I'm going to have a bye from covering a Nebraska game, that I can be on my couch and take everything in. As much as I do enjoy going to all kinds of stadiums, it's you know it wouldn't be as much fun. Probably still beneficial from a work standpoint. So I'm cool with it. Like if you can stretch out the college football season to 14 weeks, 15 weeks, whatever it is that the regular season holds, I'm all for more.
BT, how do you feel about the double bye?
I love the double bye. I treat the bye week like Thursday of March Madness, the first day. My couch thinks I'm a part of it usually on bye week. So yes, give me two of them.
All right. All right. We have Michael Brunts with us. Brunts, do you have anything you'd like to tell the people for being late?
No, we just had some HVAC things, and everything's all clear. So my apologies for being late. I'll stay late after class.
System is up and running. You don't have no more issues.
No, all good.
You didn't have a
You guys
bad
talking double
play in
buys?
your...
Is that what I?
Yeah, we're
what I
talking.
walked in
We're
on?
talking double buys.
Everybody loves a double buy.
All right. I might be the rare one who... I don't know. It just feels like it just extends things just a little bit. Though I never mind.
Much better. It's much better than a Friday night game. And with the Friday night game creates like another triple bye kind of situation, because you have a third Saturday if you're around Nebraska all season where you don't have a game to attend. And I felt like the Friday night game, I still, not on the road, but at Memorial Stadium, I felt like it was like a scrimmage that was happening. So I just could not get in the right frame of mind all day on that Friday. It messed up my whole weekend.
Well, it is our job here on the Husker247 HypeCast to get you in the right frame of mind for Nebraska's game on Saturday against UCLA. The Huskers have an opportunity to punch their ticket to a bowl game for the first time since 2016. We only said that 4 straight weeks last year, so we're starting off again. We'll see how Nebraska does with their first opportunity. Well, third opportunity, since they could have done it against Indiana and Ohio State. But here we are. Nebraska, UCLA, let's dive right into it. We're going to start on the offensive side of the ball, and we're going to start with Mitch Sherman. Mitch, Nebraska had a little bit of success. I don't want to make too much of it, but a little bit of success running the ball against Ohio State last week. What do you think they can do to kind of build upon that as they kind of seek answers for the offensive funk that they find themselves in?
Well, I think it's funny because some fans, I believe, think like the offensive, the running game exists like in this vacuum, and you should just be able to do it, and it's not dependent on all kinds of other things within the offense. But clearly, it is. It's a domino effect. And even though it was only 2 or 3 plays, when Nebraska had some semblance of a QB run game, and not even a QB run game, just like the ability to be mobile and force the defense to even pay attention to the quarterback when he gets outside of the pocket and is no longer going to throw the ball. That to me opens up lots of things in the run game. And then maybe the point about the offense right now that Nebraska fans are most up in arms over is the short passing game, the screen game, which was not on point, as we know, in either of the past 2 games against Indiana or Ohio State. It's still like Nebraska has to continue to try to go back to this, because having some success with that part of the offense is important for its ability to just run the ball on traditional runs. But to your point, it needs to continue. They need to build on what happened in those few moments against a very good borderline great Ohio State defense, and having times where Nebraska pushed the pile where it could get 2 yards when it needed 2 yards, even if it was spotted as 0 yards, or when, it could find a little bit of a crease. There were a couple drives in the third quarter where Nebraska running backs found a crease, and then getting Ramir Johnson back this week against UCLA, should help all of those matters. I feel like it's trending up just a little bit from where it was at maybe a week ago, even 2 weeks ago, coming out of the Rutgers game, but coming out of the bye before after the Rutgers game. But clearly it's not where the Huskers want it.
Brunt, as the resident Husker 24/7 tight end correspondent, what are your thoughts on the last couple of weeks for Thomas Fidone, and is it a harbinger for things to come?
Well, they finally got him going forward, and that feels like progress. No more of the short kind of stuff where you got to make a catch, pivot, and try to get upfield. That's not good for him. Not a good look. I don't like that for him. It seems like Nebraska's going there more. I do wonder. There feels like there should be a place for Thomas Fidone in Nebraska's red zone offense, right? Like that's where we have not seen very much of him or any Nebraska tight end. So I do wonder if you can maybe unlock something there. I don't know if it's, something has flipped with Thomas Fidone either, but it seems like he's playing angrier, like he's running with intent that he maybe didn't have before. So I'm not sure if that's something different or anything's changed, but it feels like if you're trying to, find some throws that you can kind of count on, the tight end might be a better option than what Nebraska is trying to do in the screen game right now in the short passing game. So I think there's more to unlock there for him, and I think he's making the most of the opportunities that he's got in the last couple of games.
Brian, Brunt's mentioned getting Thomas Fidone more involved in the red zone. Do you have a kind of a working theory why that has been such a struggle for Nebraska? Not Fidone specifically, but when the field gets smaller, Nebraska's offense has really struggled heading into the end zone this year. Yeah. And they struggled again against Ohio State.
Yeah, a few of the things I thought would be a little bit more prominent just haven't come to the surface. I thought we'd see a little bit more success with Banks down there too at times. And you mentioned Fidone, against Ohio State. Probably my biggest, if I were to have a negative critique, was when they had after the Hartzog pick, when the ball was at the 7-yard line. I just thought it was going to be incredibly hard. I know you're trying to get the ball down on those first 2 plays to like the 2 or 3, but Ohio State's got a really solid defense, and I just thought it was going to be really tough for Nebraska to get anything done just on runs with Dowdell up the middle, and they got it to the 6, right? And so it's 3rd and goal on the 6. And I just felt like maybe one of those plays you do that, but there was sort of a wasted couple of plays, it felt like to me, that put you into that 3rd and goal at the 6, and they tried to set something up for Lloyd, and he probably got a bad spot. But I just hope going forward, I know everything has a purpose and there's reasons why they do it, but every down has to be precious down there for this team. They've really got to unlock stuff like on first down that can be useful, more so than it has been. So there's a variety of things at play. I mean, the theme for the offensive as a whole, though, has to be finishing. We can talk about the red zone, but we can also talk about those plays that have been there and they've just left them, like the Banks. They free up Banks on that play in the 3rd quarter, would have been a 32-yard touchdown, and Dillon just misses the throw there. So they've had these moments where it's like right there right by their grasp, and they haven't been able to do it. So that's going to be the key in November. Can you, on those 1 or 2 plays per week, can you put the punctuation at the end of the sentence?
Brunt, I want to ask you about Nebraska's offensive line, kind of where this group is at. We've seen some changing of pieces with Micah Mazuka playing left tackle at times. Where do you think this group is as we head into a critical 4-game stretch in 5 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been okay. I mean, I think that's kind of been where they've been all year. I feel like for the most part, they've pass protected relatively well. I mean, you have to consider that Nebraska's on its 3rd left tackle, 4th if you count Mazuka getting in there. And, it's been okay. I mean, I think you could quibble and say that, the run offense could be a little bit better than what it's been. But, I don't know that it's been near the top of my list of concerns that the offense has had, 2/3 of the way, or where we're at 75% of the way almost through the season now. So, it's going to be a little bit of a different finish to the season after UCLA. I mean, UCLA actually does have a pretty good run defense. That's one of the statistical things that they excel at. But, it's Wisconsin, it's Iowa down the stretch, and how that group kind of asserts itself, I think will determine what Nebraska can get done. But they've been okay. I mean, I think that's, for an offense that's really struggled, that's you'll take that. Just okay is just okay and good enough.
Mitch, one of the things that I feel like I got completely wrong as the season has played out is I was pretty high on Nebraska's wide receiver group as a whole. As the season has gone along, it hasn't looked that way for the most part. Does Nebraska have a best wide receiver right now?
I probably had that wrong too. I mean, from a statistical perspective on who Nebraska's putting the ball into the hands of most often, it's Ja'Cory Barney, but he's not a traditional receiver in this offense yet. I think next year they're going to find ways to get him downfield. He clearly has the speed, but they like Banks and Nair more in that role of taking it downfield. Best receiver. Look, if you're talking about just receiving the ball, it's probably Nair. And I'm going to look at it from the standpoint of an overall player. And Banks is just too much of a liability, I think, on the edge with his blocking, and some of that I think is just physical limitations. It's hard for him to get extension with his arms and get defensive backs and linebackers off of the backs and receivers who he's blocking for. Nair doesn't have any of those physical things that hold him back. I think when he's playing at his best, he's the best Nebraska receiver. But the problem is we just haven't seen him at his best enough. And, it was interesting to hear Matt Rule say that he thought Nair played an excellent game against Ohio State. And there was nothing in the statistics that would lead you to believe that. I think he had 2 catches and it was low yardage. Almost he had the touchdown that was taken off the board and Nebraska scored on the next play with Dowdell on the 1-yard plunge. But I think it's there. It's there for him. Like, I think he's good enough. He's talented enough to be an NFL wide receiver. He's just not showing it consistently this season at Nebraska.
BC, it was a rough October for Dylan Raiola. I believe no touchdown passes, I think 5 interceptions. And just as you saw, as Dylan went, the offense kind of went overall. Do you anticipate things to look dramatically different with, I don't want to say a significantly worse opponent, but there's a big drop off between Indiana, Ohio State, and now UCLA. You think things can look different for Dylan Raiola on Saturday?
Yeah, possibly. I hope they can unlock some things in the downfield passing game. I'm looking at UCLA stats. I mean, they're 118th in the country in pass defense, 17th in the Big Ten. So there's some leaks back there. As has been mentioned, I think the pass pro has been pretty good. At times it's been guys haven't got separation. There's been times when the ball's gotten out a little late. I think Dylan's gotten them into some good run checks and stuff like that we don't always, we get so focused on his passing stats or all of that sometimes that can go past the discussion. But I think that he's growing in that aspect. So, I think there's been some lessons that he's probably taken from this October, and you just hope he applies them to November because all the talent is there. And if he hits another throw or two in some of these games that have gone by, the outcome's different and the narrative's different. That's sort of the nature of that position, right? Like there's these big throws that pop up in a game, and whether it's NFL or college, you just got to make them, and that changes the whole discussion. So he'll have those chances in November to do that. I like the fact, to finish this off, that he was not asked about Marcus Satterfield at the press conference. He brought it up unsolicited and defended his coach. And I'm not here to get in a discussion about that. I like that as a freshman, a 19-year-old going out of his way to stand up for his coach and take that on in a leadership aspect. I was impressed by that because that's a place he didn't have to go, but he went. And I think he knew that there's a lot of attention on this guy. Let's bring it back, to the whole group here. And I like that. So there's stuff like that I think is really important that he's doing too.
Let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball. Mitch, you were in the press box in Bloomington. You watched Nebraska's defense basically no show for 4 quarters. You're in the press box at the Horseshoe for Ohio State, and you watched them really kind of step up. They had a couple busts that Ohio State was able to hit on, but that was the most talented team on Nebraska's schedule, and they played with them for 4 quarters. What was the biggest difference for you in those 2 games? And could you tell pretty early on that Nebraska seemed like it was a different version than what you saw in Indiana?
Well, same. Yeah. The first possession for Ohio State, they get fantastic field position. Nebraska botches the opening kickoff, fumbles the first play, gets sacked on second down, and then shanks the punt. So, the defense has got every reason to go out there with a short field and hang its head. The home crowd is into it, and they stood up to the challenge and got a 4th down stop against one of the best running backs in the country. So, yeah, you could see a difference right there. That did not happen against Indiana. In that moment against Indiana, every time Indiana made the play. I think the biggest difference to me just overall in the game was the way Nebraska played on 3rd down. Ohio State was 1 of 10 on 3rd down, and you're just not going to see Ohio State do that very often with the receivers that it has. I mean, the receivers step up and make plays on 3rd down, and Ohio State was unable to do that in that game. So that's to me, that's why the game was the way it was, because of what the Nebraska defense was able to do on 3rd down. It did not. I don't have the numbers in front of me from Indiana of what Nebraska was on 3rd down, but I believe Indiana was well over 50% or was over 50%. So huge flip in performance in that moment of the game.
BC coming into the year, I don't know that he was high on a lot of lists of freshmen to keep an eye out for, but what have we seen this year from Willis McGahee, the 4th, as he's gotten a lot of playing time, and he seems to maximize every opportunity he gets on the field? Yeah,
he does, because he only played 8 snaps on Saturday, but you would have thought it was more just because it's like, man, he popped up like 3 times in big situations, forced a fumble. He's forced 2 fumbles already this season, and he's probably been the least talked about. I guess Larry Tarver maybe less, but when you think of Shavers and Barney and some of the Miami guys, but McGahee, I think his snap count's going to go up. That's what they said this week. He's earning that. It's kind of interesting because MJ Sherman's playing at a really high level, and I think there's a good mentorship program going on there with him and Willis. And, Princewell was kind of that guy you thought could even be the top dog. I think some of us in August thought he might be the top dog at Jack by this point. And really, it's sort of emerging as MJ and Willis right now. We'll see where that goes in November, but very impressive for him. He was one of those guys, I think, if you go back to like August, the last week of August, and people heard he might blow through his red shirt, people are like, oh, that's interesting. He kind of didn't expect that. Maybe he wanted to play. I don't know, but he's making the most of it. So he's getting a lot out of this year, and I think there's more to come in November. Seems like he's going to be someone who makes a big play where he forces one of those fumbles or something that Nebraska gets on, and maybe it helps tilt a game.
Brunts, the last time UCLA was on the field, they went out to Rutgers and they threw the ball all over the yard. What are you expecting to see from the Bruins on offense? And how do you feel like Nebraska kind of matches up with what looks to be, on paper at least, a very one-dimensional Bruins team?
Yeah, these kinds of matchups have generally favored Nebraska, where you're facing an offense that doesn't really threaten you in one aspect of the game. The one thing that I think gives you a little bit of pause is you're playing a veteran quarterback, a guy that's kind of seen everything at this point. The way that they went out and kind of dismantled Rutgers in some ways, especially through the air, gives you a little bit of pause. But I think the one thing that Nebraska can kind of build off of from last week was the amount of pressure they were able to get and the way that they were able to kind of assert themselves up front against Ohio State's offensive line. It's interesting coming out of that game. So much of the narrative, at least nationally, has been how broken Ohio State is. But I mean, I thought Nebraska really kind of did whatever it wanted to for the most part up front. And I think this is the kind of game that they can do that again. I mean, I think they can get a little bit exotic with some of their blitz looks and things like that. But, I would expect this is a game where Nebraska is going to be able to get pressure with rushing 3 or 4, just kind of based on what UCLA's done so far. So as long as they keep Garbers in the pocket, they don't let him, get out and kind of get those broken plays and throws downfield, I think they'll be okay. So, the thing, at least on Nebraska's pass defense, that I'm eager to see is kind of what it looks like in the secondary, because we don't know yet about Tommy Hill. Nebraska actually mixed and matched a lot on the back end. You had, Hartzog playing both corner and safety. You had Buford playing both corner and safety, and guys kind of in different spots. I thought Deshaun Singleton played pretty well for the most part against Ohio State. So kind of how that picture looks, I'm eager to see. And I don't know that there's one look either that they're trying to get to with guys in certain spots. I think they're pretty comfortable mixing and matching if they have to in the middle of the game.
Brunt, I want to give you as much time as you would like to take to heap praise on John Hohl for ending Nebraska's long nightmare of being able to kick field goals.
Yeah, he did it once. We'll see if he can do it again. I don't know that I could heap more praise than Gus Johnson did on a couple of those kicks.
Oh man,
he
legendary.
He gave John Hohl the end of the game type octave that you can only go to a few times, which I appreciated on the rewatch. But I mean, if you can rely on John Hohl to make 40-yard field goals, I mean, how much different does this offense look over the last month of the season? I mean, we joke about it, but in the press box, when Nebraska gets to the 15-yard line and we're saying, okay, this is still 4-down territory here, right? Like that's a completely different conversation than, you can trust a guy to hit a 47-yarder with some pressure. So we'll see if he can do that. I forget who it was on Tuesday, but they hinted that John Hohl put on a show during practice. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I don't know if he had like Roman candles that he was holding while he was kicking the ball, or there was some kind of dance, song and dance routine, but
Kicking with his left foot now.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he actually kicked it with his heel. He turned around and just heeled it through from 40. But no, I that kind of a development's pretty big for Nebraska's offense and finishing drives and points and things like that. But he kind of needs to show it, I think, a couple different times. It was after the game when he was talking to some of us outside. It was kind of like, yeah, like no big deal. And it's like you just kicked like one of the longest field goals in program history in the horseshoe. Like nobody was expecting that.
Yeah. Mitch, we had heard kind of all season that Jamari Butler wasn't 100%, and then the rumblings kind of came out. And I think Matt Rule kind of addressed it after the bye week that Jamari Butler was healthy finally going into Indiana. I didn't see as much of it there. We saw maybe the best version of Jamari Butler we've ever seen. He made a fantastic play to at least force a 4th down on the game-winning drive for Ohio State. He had sacks. He was getting held. He was getting tackled by the neck. How different can this look if this version of Jamari Butler is available to Nebraska for the stretch finish here?
Yeah, you're hinting at my upcoming oddly specific prediction here. But I won't.
All right.
I won't spill it yet. But I was just having the
job.
conversation this morning with somebody about how Nebraska doesn't have Nebraska has a very good defense, one of the best defenses in the Big Ten. I think the defense that we saw against Indiana was the outlier. Like that's even great defenses are allowed to have one bad day, and it's a very good defense. It can prove itself to be a great defense in November, but it doesn't have anyone who is even in the conversation. I don't think right now for first team All Big Ten, and part of that is because first team All Big Ten is almost like getting first team All-American. There's so many teams in the Big Ten that it's like second team All Big Ten is like akin to the old being first team in Nebraska's previous conferences. But if there's anybody I think like who, if they were playing at their best all season and was healthy and stringing together games like Jamari had against Ohio State, partly because of the position that he plays and it's very noticeable, that's a guy who could have done it. I don't think it's going to happen unless, he goes out and gets 10 sacks in the month of November, but he's that kind of player. He's that kind of player at that kind of a position where you could see him doing that. It was game changing to see for Nebraska. Ohio State had to alter some things that it was doing offensively because Butler so owned the Buckeyes left tackle. And I don't care if it was a backup for Ohio State playing left tackle. If you're on scholarship and you've been assigned to play left tackle at Ohio State, you are a good player, unless there have been some kind of a massive failure in the ability to develop that position, which is one of the last positions at Ohio State that you want to have a failure in developing. And that guy who was out there to start the game had no chance to stop Jamari unless he was, as you said, grabbing him around the neck. So that's the kind of player he can be. That's the kind of guy that's why he got a single digit at the beginning of the year, although he has since given it back. And that's the kind of player that you heard from defensive teammates saying, "Hey, do not sleep on Jamari Butler. He is that good, and I think he has NFL ability."
I think we're going to set up a Jamari Butler November sack counter to see how close he can get to 10. If he hits 10, we'll do something for it. I don't know what, but
that would be
we'll make something of it. PC, we'll finish up defensively with this. You had a lot of freshmen make the travel roster for the first time. Some young guys potentially going to get some opportunities now as the season gets shorter because they're going to have the chance to play. Nebraska can start utilizing them in games. Is there anybody that you're keeping an eye on? I know you've mentioned Larry Tarver in the past.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys like Caleb Benning who were on the travel roster. Who was the other one? Brunt's a young guy.
Braylon Prude.
Yep.
Oh yeah, Braylon Prude. Could be somebody. I think there'll be a Malachi Coleman watch. I don't know what's going to happen there, but he's played one game. I know we're talking defense, but he's got games to play and he could still keep his red shirt. So there'll be curiosity about him. But yeah, I it's an interesting discussion because I could see those guys popping up in some capacity, but it's also difficult, I understand, to just throw people in unless there's an injury or something in November and you're trying to win these games and there's a lot on the line. So I don't know that there's going to be someone who just jumps off the page. To me, this discussion is always more about like the guys like McGahee who have already been playing. And it's like, okay, now you're seeing that they're building up to maybe they're going to be like a 20 snap a game guy or something like that. So I always kind of get more locked in on that than the other thing. But yeah, I could see like Caleb or somebody getting out there in some shape or form, whether it's special teams or whatever. And that's obviously good for those guys if they get some reps.
Oddly specific prediction time. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, you could use Van Poppel for one more game, I think, too. So it'll be interesting which one that is.
All right, I jumped the gun there. Oddly specific prediction time. Let's dive into it. Mitch has already kind of hinted where he's going to go, so we're going to give him the floor. Oddly specific prediction from our guest, Mitch Sherman.
Yeah, Nebraska's going to score on a strip sack fumble, and I'm going to say that it's Jamari Butler who did it to get very specific. I feel like it's specific enough to say just a strip sack fumble against Garbers, but I'll go with Butler getting in the end zone this game. Okay.
Do you want to throw a quarter out there or a yard line even? Do you want to try to dress it up even more?
Sure. Second quarter happens from inside the 20. We'll go at like the 14-yard line. That's where the ball snapped from when he drops back to pass. If that happens, come find me in the press box. I don't know. We'll do a little dance or something.
Okay. All right. We'll make that happen.
Put on a show. We're
gonna put on a show. I'll see if I can get those Roman candles past security.
We'll need the drones.
Yeah. Brunt.
I got two for you. I think Nebraska's defense is going to force 3 turnovers. I'll go along with Mitch's strip sack from Butler. I like that. I think they're gonna intercept 2 passes as well. I think Malcolm Hartzog. I'm not going to say Malcolm Hartzog. I'm going to say Sierra Wright gets one, and I think John Bullock. He comes out of nowhere, maybe a shallow crossing route. Garbers doesn't see him. He steps in front of it and runs it back the other way. And I think we get a little bit of a show from John Hohl again in Memorial Stadium. I think he's only going to hit 2 this week, but I think they're both going to be longer than 40 yards. I think the weather is supposed to be a little bit funky on Saturday, but that doesn't bother John Hohl, who has ice water in his veins, and he nails 2 field goals of longer than 40 yards.
He's a Lincoln kid. He can play in the weather.
That's true. He made more field goals last week than he'd made in his career in Lincoln. So
no. He had three as a senior, and he made 3 last week. So he's now over. He's made more as a college player than he did.
Okay. Yes.
But
my apologies.
Yeah. How dare you short him? How dare you? BC.
Dante Dowdell's going to have that elusive, explosive run of 58 yards.
Yeah. I don't believe it.
But here's the thing. Nebraska's going to have the ball in their own 41. Similar to Ohio State, he's going to have to make a guy miss. He's kind of going to do it, but he's going to get tripped a little bit. So he's going to lose a little bit of steam. And so the whole crowd's like, come on, make it, and he's going to get one UCLA Bruin who's determined is going to track him down at the 1 yard line. So it's going to be a great play, but it's like, And I think Nebraska will block a punt too. I think they're like walking tall. They got their cologne on right now after John Hohl's performance. And so they're like, what can we do now, guys? And they're going to go after one, and they're going to get one. I don't know if it's going to be one where they can return it or not. Maybe it goes off the side 16 yards and the ref has no idea where to mark it. I always like those situations, so we'll go with that.
Speaking of the refs, Nebraska fans get after Big Ten officials when 2 different times on Saturday they overturn calls that go against Nebraska. Nebraska will have thought it had forced a fumble and thought that it had recovered the ball at the 32-yard line, UCLA's 32-yard line. But no, the Big Ten, doing their job for once, buzzes in, says, we're going to take a look at this. They take a look. They determine that the runner's knee was down. They reverse the call. The crowd gets really incensed. Later in the game, Thomas Fidone makes an acrobatic sideline catch. Looks like he taps the toe in. They go to the booth once again. And once again, Big Ten officials take it away from Nebraska. It's a reversal. The student section is incensed, but they're not animals. They're not going to throw stuff on the field at Nebraska.
That's what I was going to say. Don't throw your fireball shooters.
Yeah, they're going to give the officials hell on Saturday. 2 reverse calls that go against Nebraska, a bloodthirsty crowd in Memorial Stadium, but no trash on the field.
Love it.
All right. Picks to click. We'll start with Bruns.
Yeah, I think I like what I've seen from Thomas Fidone. I think he's going to be my pick to click in this one. He's last 2 games combined, he's gone over 100 yards. I think Nebraska's maybe found a little something there. So I think Thomas Fidone has a nice game in the passing game.
I'll go ahead and jump in right here. As far as I know, this player will be available to play. Last week, I chose someone who ended up missing, and that didn't look very good for us. So I'm not going to do that again. John Hohl, multiple field goals again. He's going to be the talk of Lincoln after Saturday. 3 more field goals for John Hohl, who gets up to 7 on the season. Longest make, 46 yards. BC.
Jalen Lloyd is starting to pop up more, and it feels like he'll have something. I think he'll find the end zone. He's going to make a couple big plays, and it feels like since the first bye, we've started to see his number called just a little bit more. And I think this game, there's finally that payoff for it.
Mitch.
I was on the edge of my chair, hoping against hope that you guys weren't going to pick my guy, and I made it through. Ja'Cory Barney Jr. is my pick to click in this game. UCLA's got the 17th ranked pass defense among 18 teams in the Big Ten. I think there's things that are going to happen, and we all, well, not you, Mike, but we all kind of went this direction in picking a Nebraska pass catcher. I think something happens for Ja'Cory. More than likely it's on a big run after the catch. That's kind of his MO, what Nebraska's trying to get him loose on. And they've been a step away or a block away countless times this year. I think it happens against UCLA. He takes one to the house, maybe even comes up with his first 100-yard receiving game at Nebraska.
All right. Well, let's see what the scores look like. I'm curious. I think the spread got down to 6.5. It might be working its way back up. I'm curious where everybody goes here. We will start with our guest, Mitch Sherman.
Yeah, I'm going to say 31-17 Nebraska. This will be the first game that Nebraska has won when the defense under Tony White gave up more than 14 points. As you see, I'm not expecting as big of a day from John Hohl as Mike. One field goal for John Hohl, and Nebraska gets its offense going. Dylan Raiola throws a couple touchdowns, and I think more so than that, the prediction that I have for Saturday is that Memorial Stadium is going to be ready to go, which is a little different than what you might expect coming off 2 losses. But I really feel like the fans are going to come into this game with a lot of energy and a feeling like now is the time to capitalize on the way the team played against Ohio State. And I don't think it's going to be a lackluster crowd at all from the start in this game, and it's going to be a factor. It's also going to be one of those days that's just like a little bit bone chilling, not like in the 30 or 40 degree temperature range, but like in the 50s and maybe a little rain, overcast. In a lot of ways, it's going to feel like a November in the Big Ten compared to the conditions we've had for previous games. So that's going to play in Nebraska's favor. I think it's really going to get the crowd juiced up too, and Nebraska wins by 2 touchdowns.
All right, sweater weather. It's worth pointing out that John Hohl could hit 8 field goals and Nebraska scores a touchdown and still get to the 31 that you're
31.
there.
That's not how I see it.
Just saying, if you wanted to go that route, it's possible. BT.
Yeah, I think Mitch nailed it with the crowd. We talked about this right after the game, Schaefer, on that pod, how, we could get into this debate about the whole moral victory thing. But what that game did do, I think, is it helped bring the juice on Saturday.
People were excited. I've had more people ask me if I know about available tickets for this game than any other game this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I definitely think that. And this is a weird comparison a little bit, but remember Frost's first year, the 0-6 start, and they won that game against Minnesota where things all went right on offense and they just blew them out. I'm not saying a blowout here, but there was sort of this cathartic feel in Memorial Stadium for that moment in that program. I think Saturday can be that kind of day if Nebraska handles their business as far as how the crowd reacts and getting that 6th win. I'll say it's a little tougher than that one was 6 years ago, 27-16 Nebraska.
All right. I think once again, we're all kind of around the same number. I like Nebraska here. If the offense was playing a little bit better, I think they could really blow this game out. I don't think they can, but they will score 6 times, 3 field goals, 3 touchdowns, 30 points, give up 16. Nebraska 30, UCLA 16. Michael Bruns, take us home.
Yeah, same ballpark, 27-14 Nebraska. It feels like the first team to 20 will win this one. I think it's going to be Nebraska. And those 2 whole field goals with 3 touchdowns, I like Nebraska to take care of business.
All right. Well, Mitch, we appreciate you joining us here on the Husker247 HypeCast.
Happy to do it.
And you can check out all of Mitch's work at The Athletic. For Michael Bruns, Brian Christopherson, I'm Mike Schaefer. We're Husker247. Be sure to check out everything we got going on at Husker247.com.